Welcome to the Silenced History Channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos. In 1925, this surreal photograph shows the aftermath of a devastating fire at Madame Tussauds Wax Museum in London, where intense heat melted and grotesquely distorted the famous wax figures. The damaged mannequins appear almost human-like in their twisted forms, creating an unsettling scene of artistic destruction. This incident destroyed many historically significant wax portraits and forced the museum to rebuild much of its collection, highlighting the fragile nature of wax as an artistic medium. This haunting photograph was taken in May 1945 near the Buchenwald concentration camp in Germany. Allied soldiers discovered thousands of wedding rings collected from victims of the Holocaust, stored in wooden boxes. The image shows hands holding some of these rings, each one representing a life lost and a story silenced. This powerful documentation serves as stark evidence of the systematic persecution and serves as a reminder of one of history's darkest chapters. In 1953, this haunting photograph shows the before and after effects of Operation Doorstep, a U.S. civil defense nuclear test conducted in Nevada. The top image displays a typical American family scene with mannequins positioned in a domestic setting, while the bottom shows the same room after exposure to an atomic blast. This experiment evaluated thermal and blast effects on civilian structures and simulated human figures to assess nuclear weapon damage for civil defense planning during the Cold War. In 1850, this haunting daguerreotype shows German architect Karl Weber posing with his deceased wife Emily in Stratford, captured just hours after her death. This photograph represents the Victorian practice of post-mortem photography, where families commission portraits with recently deceased loved ones as final mementos. Such images were common during an era of high mortality rates and limited photographic opportunities, serving as both mourning rituals and precious keepsakes when photography was expensive and rare. In 1912, these two young brothers, Michel and Edmund Navratil, became known as the Titanic Orphans after surviving the ship's tragic sinking. Their father had taken them aboard under assumed names during a custody dispute, and when the ship went down, he perished while ensuring his sons reached safety. The boys, ages 2 and 4, were rescued but couldn't communicate their real identities, speaking only French. Their mother later identified them from newspaper photographs, reuniting the family after this extraordinary maritime tragedy. In the early 1900s, this macabre photograph shows patrons dining at Hell's Cafe, an underground establishment decorated entirely with human skulls and bones. The restaurant, likely located in Paris's catacombs or a similar ossuary, offered customers the bizarre experience of eating surrounded by thousands of human remains. This ghoulish dining venue capitalized on Victorian fascination with death and the macabre, providing wealthy thrill seekers with an unforgettable but deeply unsettling culinary experience among the dead. During World War I in 1917, this fortunate British soldier poses cheerfully with his steel helmet, displaying a large bullet hole that nearly cost him his life. The soldier's smile and triumphant gesture demonstrate the dark humor and resilience that helped troops cope with the constant threat of death on the Western Front. His damaged Brodie helmet serves as a stark reminder of how close he came to becoming another casualty, while his survival became a symbol of luck amid the brutal trench warfare. In 1915, this eerie photograph shows the storage facility for wrapped medical cadavers at the University of Pennsylvania, where dozens of bodies were preserved for anatomical study and medical education. The systematic arrangement of shrouded corpses reflects the institutional approach to handling human remains for scientific purposes during the early 20th century. This image documents the behind-the-scenes reality of medical schools, where cadaver procurement and storage were essential but often hidden aspects of physician training. This joyful photograph from 1945 captures Dutch boys celebrating aboard a freedom train, following their liberation from German occupation during World War II. Their radiant smiles and exuberant gestures reflect the overwhelming relief and happiness experienced by civilians after years of Nazi rule, food shortages, and oppression. The train represents both literal and symbolic freedom, transporting these young survivors away from the horrors of war toward hope and reconstruction in liberated Netherlands. This shocking medical photograph from 1895 shows a primitive treatment for headaches involving what appears to be a hammer and anvil procedure, with medical practitioners attempting to relieve cranial pressure through crude mechanical intervention. The scene depicts the barbaric state of neurological medicine before modern understanding of brain anatomy and proper surgical techniques. Such brutal methods often caused more harm than relief, reflecting an era when medical desperation led to dangerous experimental procedures that frequently resulted in permanent injury or death. During the Chinese Cultural Revolution, 1966 to 1976, this disturbing photograph shows Red Guard students publicly humiliating their teacher through forced struggle sessions designed to denounce anti-revolutionary intellectuals. The educator, wearing a dunce cap and placard identifying his alleged crimes, endures psychological torture as young revolutionaries enforce Mao's campaign against traditional education and authority figures. These brutal public denunciations destroyed China's intellectual class, with millions of teachers, scholars, and professionals persecuted, imprisoned, or killed during this decade of ideological extremism. In the 1960s, this behind-the-scenes photograph shows Disney technicians working on an early animatronic figure, likely for Disneyland's revolutionary attractions like the Enchanted Tiki Room or Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. The complex mechanical puppet required intricate maintenance of its internal systems, motors, and programming mechanisms. Disney's pioneering work in audio animatronics technology transformed theme park entertainment and later influenced the film industry's approach to mechanical special effects and robotics. In 1968, this powerful photograph captures the tense moment during the Soviet invasion of Prague, when Warsaw Pact tanks rolled through Czechoslovakia to crush the reformist movement known as the Prague Spring. A defiant Czech civilian confronts Soviet soldiers with a gesture of resistance, symbolizing the courage of ordinary citizens against overwhelming military force. This brutal intervention ended Alexander Dubček's liberalization efforts and restored hardline communist control, crushing hopes for political freedom in Czechoslovakia for another 20 years. In the 1860s, this elaborate stereoscopic photograph from Les Diableries series shows a theatrical tableau featuring costumed performers and skeletons in a macabre, hellish scene. These popular French entertainment photographs combined live models with props and stage effects to create fantastical underworld narratives for Victorian audiences. The series capitalized on 19th century fascination with death, the supernatural, and moral allegories, using early photographic technology to create immersive three-dimensional viewing experiences that brought hellish fantasies to bourgeois parlors. Captured in 1910, this photograph shows two young boys working barefoot on dangerous electric looms in a Georgia cotton mill. The children climb onto the moving machinery to reach high shelves, demonstrating the perilous conditions child laborers faced in early 20th century American factories. Their bare feet and casual clothing contrast starkly with the industrial environment surrounding them. Images like this, documenting the exploitation of children in mills and factories, helped fuel the progressive movement that eventually established comprehensive child labor laws. In 1942, this mysterious photograph shows the U.S. Navy L-8 blimp floating unmanned over California after its two-man crew vanished without explanation during a routine patrol mission. The airship returned to base with its engines running and radio functioning, but both crew members had disappeared, leaving behind their parachutes and life jackets. This unexplained incident became one of aviation's greatest mysteries, with theories ranging from enemy action to supernatural causes never definitively resolved. In 1982, this poignant photograph shows children crowded together in an overcrowded classroom during the Israeli siege of West Beirut, documenting the continued struggle to maintain education amid warfare. French photojournalist Catherine Leroy captured this scene while covering the brutal 88-day siege that trapped hundreds of thousands of civilians. The image reveals how children attempted to continue their schooling despite bombardment, shortages of supplies, and constant danger, highlighting the resilience of Lebanese families during one of the most devastating periods of the Lebanese Civil War. In 1947, this eerie photograph shows newly molded doll heads drying on racks at a manufacturing facility, their plastic surfaces dripping with excess material from the molding process. The rows of blank, expressionless faces create an unsettling scene that resembles something from a horror film rather than a toy factory. This behind-the-scenes glimpse into post-war doll production reveals the industrial processes behind childhood playthings, when mass manufacturing was replacing traditional handcrafted toys. This remarkable photograph captures Gertrude Ederle on August 26, 1926, after completing her legendary swim across the English Channel. She became the first woman to achieve this feat, finishing in 14 hours and 31 minutes. Her time broke the existing male record, proving women's endurance and inspiring athletes across the globe. This bizarre photograph from 1928 shows a woman wearing an experimental full-face swimming mask designed to protect the entire head from sun exposure and water. The unsettling rubber or canvas mask covers her face completely while allowing visibility through eye holes, creating an almost alien appearance. These early swimming accessories reflected 1920s concerns about maintaining pale skin as a beauty standard, though such masks were quickly abandoned due to their impractical design and frightening appearance. This photograph from 1989 captures a historic moment during the thawing of Cold War tensions, showing a Soviet naval officer experiencing American culture firsthand aboard the U.S. cruiser Thomas S. Gates. The officer, wearing his formal uniform with cap, takes his first taste of a hot dog while holding a Coca-Cola, iconic symbols of American lifestyle that were largely unavailable in the Soviet Union. His crew members observe in the background, witnessing this cultural exchange that symbolized the improving relations between the superpowers. This unsettling photograph from the 1930s shows cosmetics mogul Max Factor demonstrating his beauty micrometer, a bizarre contraption designed to measure facial features and detect supposed flaws in women's appearances. The metal cage-like device used precise measurements to identify areas where makeup should be applied to achieve perfect beauty standards. This invasive beauty tool reflects the era's obsession with scientific approaches to femininity and the commercialization of female insecurities for profit in the growing cosmetics industry. In 1903, this photograph documents the colonial practice of using local porters in West Bengal, where a Sikkimese woman carries a British merchant on her back using a traditional wicker basket carrier. This image reflects the exploitative labor relationships during British colonial rule in India, where indigenous people were forced into servitude for European convenience. The practice demonstrates the dehumanizing attitudes of colonial administrators who treated local populations as beasts of burden rather than equals. This remarkable Victorian photograph shows Francesco Lentini, known as the Three-Legged Man, who was born in 1889 with a rare congenital condition called diphagus, giving him an extra leg attached to his hip. Born in Sicily, Lentini performed with various circuses including Barnum and Bailey, becoming one of the most successful sideshow performers of his era. Despite his physical difference, he lived a full life, married, had 4 children, and survived to age 77, proving that physical disabilities need not define one's potential. Photographed in 1909, this remarkable autochrome image shows Mark Twain reading peacefully in his bed at home, just 1 year before his death in 1910. The pioneering color photography technique captures the aging author in his red robe, surrounded by white bedding, creating an intimate portrait of his final years. Mark Twain, born Samuel Clemens, was America's most celebrated humorist and author, famous for classics like The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, works that defined American literature and social commentary. This atmospheric photograph from 1940 shows Tram 58 navigating through the Zuglice district of Budapest, passing by a distinctive Victorian-era villa with ornate circular windows. The misty, tree-lined setting captures the romantic charm of Budapest's hillside neighborhoods before World War II devastation. This trolley line served the affluent residential areas in the Buda Hills, transporting passengers through some of the city's most scenic routes until wartime destruction and post-war urban planning eliminated many such historic tramways. This photograph, taken in the 1940s, shows a sailor returning home after 14 months at sea. He shares a kiss with his partner while holding their baby for the first time. The image captures a deeply personal reunion, symbolizing family bonds, sacrifice, and the emotional cost of long military service. Around 1900, this innovative photograph shows a German firefighter testing an experimental helmet design featuring a transparent protective shield that completely encases the head. The water-resistant apparatus was designed to protect firefighters from smoke, heat, and falling debris, while maintaining visibility during rescue operations. Though the bulky prototype appears impractical, it represents early attempts to develop specialized safety equipment for emergency responders before modern breathing apparatus and protective gear became standard in fire departments. This photograph captures Princess Fawzia Fuad of Egypt, taken around 1939. She sits elegantly on an ornate sofa wearing a dark evening gown with flowing fabric details and a feathered fan. Her regal bearing is emphasized by a diamond tiara, pearl necklaces, and matching earrings. The formal portrait showcases the refined luxury and sophisticated fashion of Egyptian royalty during the late 1930s, reflecting the glamorous lifestyle of the royal court. This heartbreaking photograph from the early 20th century shows an elderly woman carefully carrying the skull and bones of her deceased son as she relocates to another village. This practice reflects traditional burial customs in rural communities where families would exhume and transport their ancestors' remains when moving permanently. The image captures the profound grief and devotion of a mother who refuses to abandon her child, even in death, demonstrating cultural beliefs about maintaining family connections beyond the grave. Taken during Spain's distinctive wedding tradition from 1890 to 1960, this formal portrait shows a bride and groom on their wedding day. The bride wears an elegant black wedding dress with intricate lace details and a flowing veil, holding a white floral bouquet that contrasts beautifully with her dark attire. Her groom stands proudly beside her in a traditional dark suit. This Spanish custom of black wedding gowns represented sophistication and practicality, as the dress could be worn again for other formal occasions, making it a sensible choice during economically challenging times. This powerful photograph, taken in London in 1940, shows a young girl sitting among the rubble of her bombed-out home, holding her doll tightly. Captured during the Blitz, it illustrates the human cost of war, the fragility of childhood, and the enduring resilience of innocence amid devastation. This portrait shows Margaret Ann Neve, an American woman born in 1792 who lived until 1902, reaching the remarkable age of 110. Her life spanned 3 centuries, witnessing immense changes in society, technology, and history. The image captures her dignified presence in old age. Around 1920, this street scene captures the bustling life of Jerusalem during the British Mandate period. Local residents in traditional Middle Eastern clothing walk along the dusty streets, while the Deutsche Palästina Bank sign reflects the international commercial presence in the city at that time. The photograph documents Jerusalem's multicultural atmosphere, where German, Arab, Jewish, and other communities coexisted in this historically significant crossroads. Stone buildings and traditional architecture frame the scene, preserving a moment from over a century ago when the region was experiencing significant political transitions. Captured in 1961, this striking photograph showcases Goodyear's experimental illuminated tires, featuring translucent synthetic rubber with built-in lighting systems. A stylishly dressed woman poses beside a classic car equipped with these glowing white wall tires on a nighttime city street. The innovative design used internal bulbs to create an otherworldly glow, demonstrating the tire company's futuristic vision for automotive accessories. Though the illuminated tires never reached mass production due to practical concerns, they represented the era's bold experimentation with automotive technology and design aesthetics. Taking a moment from the 1950s, this photograph shows a woman seated in her automobile, carefully examining the newly introduced safety belt. She appears curious and perhaps slightly puzzled by this innovative safety device, which was just beginning to appear in cars during this decade. The woman's elegant dress and styled hair reflect the fashion of the era, while the car's interior showcases the distinctive bench seats and dashboard design typical of 1950s automotive manufacturing, marking an early chapter in vehicle safety technology. This photograph from the mid-20th century shows a woman operating New York City's remarkable pneumatic mail system, which functioned from 1897 until 1957. She sits surrounded by an intricate network of pneumatic tubes that connected 23 post offices across 27 miles of underground tunnels. The system used compressed air to rapidly transport mail canisters through the tubes at speeds up to 35 miles per hour, revolutionizing mail delivery in the bustling metropolis. This innovative postal infrastructure represented one of the most advanced urban communication networks of its era. This photograph captures a young French child sitting at a small table with a glass and wine bottle, taken during the era when French schools served diluted wine to children with their meals. The practice, which continued until 1956, was based on cultural traditions and beliefs about wine's nutritional value. The child sits formally in a domestic setting with patterned wallpaper, representing a bygone era of dramatically different attitudes toward alcohol consumption and childhood dietary practices in French culture. This aerial photograph captures the devastating 1993 Great Flood along the Mississippi River. The image shows downtown Jefferson City, Missouri, completely inundated with floodwater, including government buildings and residential areas submerged under muddy water. Streets have become waterways, and only the tops of buildings remain visible above the flood line. This historic disaster affected multiple states and caused billions in damage, representing one of the most severe flooding events in American history. Captured in 1957, this atmospheric photograph documents the quintessential Parisian café culture that defined post-war France. Elegantly dressed patrons gather around marble-topped tables in an ornately decorated establishment, complete with decorative ceiling fixtures and mirrored walls typical of Belle Époque design. A woman in fashionable 1950s attire enjoys conversation with companions, while waiters attend to customers throughout the bustling interior. This scene represents the heart of French social life, where cafes served as cultural salons for intellectual discourse, romance, and community gathering. Taken in 1948 Los Angeles, this photograph shows a female gas station attendant during the post-war era, when women had entered many traditionally male-dominated professions. She sits casually on a stool while cleaning glass bottles, likely oil or other automotive fluids, with vintage gas pumps and Olympic gasoline signage visible in the background. Her practical work attire and confident posture reflect the changing workforce dynamics of the late 1940s, as women continued working in jobs they had taken during World War II, challenging conventional gender roles in American society. This photograph shows the magnificent interior of the old Cincinnati Public Library, captured before its demolition in 1955. The image reveals a breathtaking 5-story atrium with ornate cast-iron galleries and thousands of books lining the walls. A lone figure in white can be seen on one of the upper levels, dwarfed by the cathedral-like architecture. This temple of knowledge was tragically destroyed to make way for modern development, representing the loss of architectural heritage in mid-20th century urban renewal. Every image you've seen today carries secrets that textbooks overlooked and history forgot to mention. If you're fascinated by the untold stories behind familiar faces and forgotten moments, hit subscribe and join us every week as we reveal the hidden narratives captured in history's most powerful photographs. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like this video.